Hi, and welcome back to MicroSolutions Manufacturer's Guide to CMMC 2.0. We're going to talk about Domain 12, Security Assessments. Now, there's a single phrase that encapsulates this entire domain. Controls only matter if you know they're working. That single idea is the reason security assessment exists. Not paperwork, checklists, or passing a review. Security assessment exists to answer one very practical question. Are the protections we believe are in place actually doing what we expect them to do? In manufacturing, this mindset should feel familiar. You don't just install a machine and assume it's calibrated 5 years later. You don't trust a process just because it worked one time. You verify, you validate, you adjust. Security control should be no different. If you don't periodically step back and look at how your controls are functioning in the real world, not on paper, you're operating on assumption instead of evidence. And remember, CMMC is all about evidence. And assumptions are where surprises come from. Security assessment is how leadership gains confidence that system supports uptime, that reviews don't introduce last-minute chaos, and that when questions are asked, there are answers, not scrambles. Security assessments in CMMC terms is about self-validation. It's going to govern how an organization evaluates whether its security controls are implemented as intended, operating effectively, and still aligned to actual risk. Just as important, it defines how findings are documented and acted upon. What security assessment's not. It's not an audit, and it's not a one-time event, and it's not about fault finding or placing blame. This domain isn't designed to catch people doing things wrong. It's designed to help organizations understand what they think is happening and what is actually happening. The intent is learning and alignment, not judgment. When assessment is done well, it becomes a feedback loop between leadership, expectations, operational reality, and security outcomes. Instead of thinking in terms of scores or maturity levels, it's more useful to ask a few questions first. First, do we periodically review our security controls, or only when something forces us to? Second, when we assess controls, are we validating real behavior or just confirming that policies exist? Third, when gaps are identified, are they clearly documented and acknowledged? Fourth, do assessment results influence future decisions, or do they just live in a folder somewhere? And fifth and finally, is our assessment process repeatable, or does it change depending on who's involved and how busy we are? There are no right or wrong answers here. These questions simply surface whether assessment is functioning as a management tool or just a compliance activity. From an assessor's perspective, expectations in this domain are fairly consistent. They're not looking for perfection. They're looking for evidence that you regularly evaluate your own security posture. That evidence typically includes documentation showing assessments occur on a defined cadence, records of findings, even when those findings identify weaknesses, and evidence that gaps are tracked, prioritized, and addressed over time. In plain terms, assessors want to see that you're paying attention and doing something with what you've learned. A short assessment report, notes from a review meeting, a plan of action with dates and owners. These artifacts all tell a story that security is being monitored, not assumed. In practice, many organizations struggle here, and that's quite understandable. A common pattern is assessment happening only when a deadline appears. Another is checklists being completed without validating real-world behavior. And often, findings are identified but never fully resolved due to competing priorities. These gaps don't exist because people don't care. They exist because time, production pressure, staffing, and day-to-day demands pull attention elsewhere. Security assessments often become reactive instead of routine. Recognizing that pattern isn't a failure. It's simply a signal that assessment hasn't yet been embedded into normal operations. A mature security assessment posture is surprisingly calm. It's not loud, it's not frantic, and it doesn't rely on heroics. Good assessment looks like honest self-evaluation without any defensiveness, a clear understanding of where controls are strong and where they're weaker, and regular check-ins that lead to small, steady improvements. When questions come up, both internally and externally, there's confidence instead of concern. Not because everything's perfect, but because leadership knows where things stand. That clarity reduces uncertainty, and uncertainty is often the real risk. At a practical level, security assessments work best when a few fundamentals are in place. From a procedure standpoint, that means defining how often assessments occur, how findings are documented, and how remediation is tracked. From a people standpoint, is it clear who performs the assessment, who reviews the results, and who has authority to prioritize the follow-up actions? From a technology standpoint, assessment relies on visibility, system configurations, logs, and access patterns, without needing complex tooling to start. And from an evidence standpoint, retaining assessment notes, reports, and review discussions helps demonstrate consistency over time. None of it needs to be heavy, it just needs to be intentional. Security assessment sits at the intersection of risk assessment and control effectiveness. It's how organizations confirm that identified risks are actually being addressed, and that controls are doing the job they were designed to do. In the broader CMMC framework, this domain connects many others together. Our ebook walks through how assessment supports long-term compliance and operational resilience, showing how these pieces reinforce one another over time. It's a structured way to see the full picture without adding pressure. And when you're ready for implementation or your first assessment, check out our implementation guide. And remember, security assessment's not about perfection, it's about awareness. Knowing where you stand today allows you to make better decisions tomorrow. When assessment becomes part of how organizations think, not just something it prepares for, uncertainty decreases, confidence increases, and surprises become far less common. That's the real value of a security assessment. Not inspection, not judgment, but clarity. If you've made it this far, we want to thank you for sticking around to the end of the video. We hope you check out our ebook and our implementation guide, and we look forward to seeing you at the next domain breakdown. Thank you.